Yep. Okay.
Well, welcome and good morning to everybody who's tuned in this morning from Simon Fraser. And as you can see, welcome to my home. So I'd just like to welcome you to my place, and also, which is a bit different to what we normally do. But AusCham are holding their Your Wellbeing During COVID-19 Lockdowns webinar this morning. And my guests this morning are Paul Simos, Janek Gama and Gemma McGuinness. So I'd like to introduce each of them as we speak. It's Paul Simos, I've known for quite a few years. Paul is a certified NLP trainer and master coach. Mindfulness for yourself and those around you. How can you find the inner peace and happiness to make it through? Which I think is quite pertinent to the situation we find ourselves in now. He's an accomplished executive life coach, health coach, author and NLP certified trainer. He has a fundamental belief about his clients which frames how they work together, meaning they already have everything they need to achieve success. His role as a coach is to stimulate and challenge his clients to unlock their successful beliefs, skills, and behaviour patterns. Paul continues to study and research in coaching and NLP, which is his passion in helping others to excel their life through coaching, developing and training. Paul has been working with many clients, individuals and companies on different training and coaching programs. I'd also like to welcome Janek, who's a British mental health counsellor and psychologist and lived and worked in Southeast Asia since probably around 2005. He sees clients for many reasons, such as depression and anxiety, suicidal feelings, trauma, finding meaning and purpose in life, cultural adjustment, and simply needing someone to talk to. He's very happy to see clients from any cultural background, as long as they can speak English, of course, in this situation. His approach is existential and client-centered. His goal is not to direct or advise clients, but rather to collaborate with them and discover possibilities personally available to them and support them to more contented ways themselves through making their own choices and changes. Also like to welcome Gemma McGuinness. Gemma McGuinness is nutrition, diet and healthy balanced eating for physical future. She's a registered nutritionist on the UK Associate for a Nutritionist Register and UK Sport and Exercise Nutrition Register, and has been in fitness and nutrition industry for the past 7 years as an Irish international soccer player and competing in numerous fitness competitions. She's worked with people to improve their body composition, overall health, and those looking to improve their sporting performance with evidence-based approach. So I'd like to welcome all three of our speakers this morning, and just to give you some background on what we will talk about, and also I think a few points from my side as well. I think one of the hardest things we do in our lives right now is managing change, and this is on a daily, weekly, monthly basis as we're in lockdown, or have been in lockdown for quite some time. I think we're moving into probably week 6, and for those of you people for people in Ho Chi Minh City, we understand that this will probably go through until about the 15th of September. And I think that most other cities in Vietnam are following on as well. We tend to spend a lot of time in close quarters with those closest to us, and that's both, family, friends, or I should say probably housemates, partners, and even our pets. And during those situations, for all of those people and even our pets around us, we're probably experiencing some stress at the moment. We spend time building routines and plans daily, each of which can be changed in an instant as we are given new decrees or new plans from the government each day which direct our lives. We spend a lot of time also internalising these routines and plans that we have on a daily basis, and probably find ourselves talking to ourselves internally about whether or not to proceed or whether or not to change things again. These times, I believe, should be shared amongst our friends and network and our colleagues, and especially family, or those closest to us. If you can't, I just imagine that sometimes they may manifest themselves in different ways. Obviously, distractions of going to online forums, seeking out people who might be, of the same thinking. Maybe developing other habits, with Netflix, or just finding ourselves not doing what we promise ourselves, or the routines that we would normally have, even changing our diets to the fact of making our lives more simple. So, these are just some thoughts of how I see things at the moment, but it's better to ask the people that we've asked here this morning to speak with us. So if I go around and ask each of you, from your point of view, how do you see the current situation, which is relevant to your experience and background at this time? Maybe I'll start with you, Paul.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, it's very challenging times at the moment. We're in, I think you mentioned, our 6th week of lockdown. And when we first start, it's probably not too bad. It's a bit of exciting, it's a bit of fun. But then as we go into the 4th, the 5th, now the 6th week, it starts to get more serious. And, we're looking for ways how we're going to cope and how are we going to get through it to the end. And when is the end? We say the 15th of September, and whether that's extended or not, we don't know yet. So it's challenging to find a way to work our way through. And having said that, I think there's also a sprinkling of opportunity to look at it a little bit differently, to reevaluate our life, what we're doing, what's important for us, and how can we move better and improve our life, as opposed to going forward and we feel we're missing out on something and we're not growing. So just very quickly, just a very chunked up view, I just think about 3 quick solutions, and I'll just mention them, and then I think we can dive in and discuss it further. But number 1 is our health and our safety is number 1. So we really need to make sure we're safe, make sure we're in a healthy environment, and continue to build those 2 areas. Physical health, Gemma can give us a lot of information about that. Mental health, so Jan, he's very experienced with the mental health. We have to balance those 2 areas. So that's priority number 1. And then number 2, we have to be more accepting of the current lockdown, of the pandemic. And when I say accepting, it doesn't mean we necessarily have to like it. It doesn't even mean we agree with it. But if we can accept it and accept reality right here, right now, and we don't push against it, because what will happen, there's a saying that what we resist will persist. So if I push back at reality, it's just going to push back twice as hard. So I think we need to have an element of mindfulness about accepting what's going on. And then that leads us into the 3rd point, which is about working in our circle of influence as opposed to our circle of concern. So what's our circle of influence? That's something that I can do, Paul can do, you guys can do, something I can do in the environment of my home, of my apartment. And what that's going to do is going to give us control back, because I'm sure most of us feel as if we've lost control. We're told to do this, we're told to do that. But if we slow down and be mindful, I really believe there's a lot of control we still do have. And it's for us to be mindful and aware of that and to start to activate it. So they're just 3 key points that I think from a mindful perspective can be a great start to move forward.
Excellent, thanks, Paul. And definitely some points there to be practicing on a daily basis and considering. Yeah. So, Jan, I was just your take on sort of what's happening at the moment from your experience and also background.
Right. I mean, well, hi everyone, and I think in a way, I'm quite in alignment with what Paul's saying. So I think a lot of what I see with people at the moment, my clients, is that there's again a lack of certainty. So a lot of people are feeling very uncertain about what's going on at the moment, and the longer the lockdown goes on, the less people are able to plan, the less people feel that they have control over their lives. And obviously this is, I'm finding that people are losing out in terms of they feel that they haven't got social contact, they're not able to go out and do the things that they want. So many people feel restricted or limited in their lives. So, I mean, that can lead people into a variety of different issues, such as some people might suffer from anxiety, some people are going to be suffering from isolation. It could possibly be worse, some people feeling more depressed. But I mean, to kind of pick up on what Paul was saying earlier on, I think it is a case of sort of recognizing what you can control. So acceptance, I mean, I'd absolutely agree with Paul on that. You kind of have to accept that, there are some things you can't control. So in a way, it's about looking at what you cannot control. So if you've got all these uncertainties, what can't you control? And then what can you control? And trying to align that with what you personally need. So identifying what your actual needs are underneath that. So that might be social contact. I mean, some people really don't feel it that much. I've got some clients who, they actually quite enjoy, the isolation and not having to have social contact because it takes the pressure off. But that's not the case for most people. So I think it's about underlining what is important to you. I mean, is it routine? Is it productivity? Is it creativity? Is it social connection? And trying to figure out what those things are. And then, not to be rigid about what you think, just because you can't do those things or meet those needs in one way. I mean, are there ways you can adapt that? I mean, I know online isn't the same, but there are many things. I mean, I know Gemma earlier on has told us about running like online fitness workshops, and there are, dietary workshops and so on. So, I mean, are there ways to adapt these things? So, okay, they're not going to be the same, but, are there ways in which you might be able to meet those needs in some way, some different way, and not to be too rigid about it, to be flexible? Because, I mean, as Paul was saying, I mean, if you can't change something, then you're banging your head against a brick wall. If you expect the world to change for you, you've got to kind of control what you can and what's within your sphere of influence. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'd be at on it.
Excellent. Thanks, Jan. So just to ask Gemma as well, what's your take on the situation at the moment, and also from your background and experience as well?
Everyone. So I actually worked with people back in the UK while we were not in lockdown and they were in lockdown. So I kind of got a feel for how they felt before we kind of got into the depths of it ourselves. And from what I heard from them was, I was working with them in terms of their sport and performance, and everything was kind of rigid and everything was going smoothly. And whenever it came into lockdown, that was kind of just taken away from them, and they didn't really know where to, what kind to go along with, what type of structure they had anymore, and it kind of went out the window, and they felt as if that was kind of their identity pulled apart, kind of.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that when we approach, especially the likes of diet, that we have to, just like Yannick said as well, that we need to be able to adapt and change things. And, even for myself, in terms of how I approached my diet, I would have been quite strict in terms of alongside my sport and performance. And whenever we got into the lockdown, it's just a matter of knowing that little tiny changes can make a huge difference. And that if we're not kind of focusing on trying to be perfect, this is a time where a lot of people are struggling with this kind of trying to get everything right, but not feeling strong enough to kind of keep up with that. So it's important that when we're approaching any of this, when it comes to diet and exercise, that it's small maintainable changes. And again, working, like Paul said, working with what you really can manage and sustain. And it's the same with going into any diet, that it's not going to be this kind of quick fix or trying to make everything perfect or in a short space of time, but trying to kind of have an identity-based goal so that the things that you're doing are actually in line with who you want to become and the type of person, I want to be a strong, healthy, fit individual, rather than thinking that I just want to, in 6 weeks' time, I just want to look a certain way. It's that I want to feel good. I want to be able to And that takes time, and just accepting that small changes are the way to go for long maintainable health.
Excellent. So yeah, and I think all the different points that you've raised, certainly people are thinking about on a daily basis. I mean, even when you talk about diet, I mean, there's so many decisions you need to make on a daily basis. How do you acquire the certain food, and how do you prepare it, and whether or not it's actually nutritious. I mean, I don't think that I always make the best choices when I'm thinking of myself. So it's just another thing that you need to do in your day, and I'm sure a lot of people struggle with that as well. It's interesting. I mean, what we're going through at the moment, I don't think anybody, well, definitely in this group, we've experienced before, but a once in a lifetime event like this, hopefully, it tends to change people, physically or emotionally or from a mindful perspective. Do you think that these changes, especially in this day and age, could be something that will change people indefinitely, or this could be something that with some assistance, or probably some, I guess I'd say, tips or suggestions, people could move through this, because I think some people will get left behind. But how do we actually manage our way through this? Is there any surefire way from your perspectives?
I mean, just to clarify what you mean there, Simon. So when you say changes, what type of changes do you mean?
I guess, perhaps negative habits, where, you just sort of, and, I don't like having a conversation like this. I'd hate to think that we're going to bring the mood down too far, but it's like addressing something we're all going through. And I guess, sort of like there's a real ability for people in their situations, whatever they may be, to probably develop a habit that they might not be able to change in the future. Is it based around routines, or is it based around getting sort of some help?
I mean, my personal feeling on it is that it's actually a very big question you're asking. I mean, because I think it's not just purely about routines. I mean, some of it is that we fall out of routines, but I think so much of it is situational. It's about the actual context itself. So I think, obviously, like, you can talk about bad habits, what's a bad habit? Let's say, you're sitting around eating 3 burgers in front of Netflix every day, every evening, right? Okay, you could say it's a bad habit, but it's kind of about for me, it's about the why, what's going on there. And I think because people are feeling restricted and they don't have the option. So in many ways, I think, people fall back on these things because they're comforting. It makes them feel good, or it's a way to switch off, they're not to have to deal with the situation, in a way, kind of drifting through, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And, I think for some of these things, once things are opened up again, I hope they open up again soon. But, once, restaurants are open, you can see friends again, you can go out. I think some of those habits would change and they would revert back. But I mean, there might also be, I think for some people that might be harder. So people who already might struggle socially, or people who already don't really have these routines that Gemma was talking about earlier on, they might struggle because, I mean, it's, they might fall deeper into feeling isolated, or, their structure has gone completely. So I think it's actually a very difficult question to answer. It's a very personal thing. But personally, to sort of answer your question, I think that, and a lot of it is reversible. You can fall into bad habits. I think some will slide away automatically once, things open up again and people have the options back again. But I think for some things, like certain maybe patterns of thinking, for maybe people who feel that they've fallen behind because they haven't been able to achieve certain things during the year, it might be more difficult. So like people who feel that the time has been wasted, for example, might be, an example of that. I've lost time. I should have been studying. I should have been working. I should have been doing a particular project. That might be harder. But, I think with, looking at routines and with, again, focusing on what you can control, you can begin to move forward. And there's, I mean, from my personal perspective, there's nothing to stop people starting to move forward with those goals or ideas, even during a lockdown. Just because you can't finish a project, it doesn't mean that you can't take steps towards it. So.
Did you have something to add, Paul?
Yeah, I agree with Jan. It's a big question, and you know, I think our life is always changing. You know, that's the one thing that's constant is change. What's happened the last 18 months is that we've compressed, I heard, I'm not sure if it's true, 10 years of change into 18 months. So it's been a real shock to the system. You know, our lives have been turned upside down. So yes, it's going to have an impact. And I really think once we're safe, we're healthy, what's next? I think we need to focus more on what we can do, because what we focus on will expand and grow in our life. When we turn our focus away, it will shrink and disappear. So I'm always looking at moving forward. So what can I focus on and change in my environment to keep moving forward? And like Jan said, some people have got a certain behaviour already and maybe they haven't got a routine. They just do what they do and that worked before. But now in this environment, those same behaviours are not working. So we need to say, hey, I have to change something, and that's the opportunity to have a look at your life. What am I doing? What's one thing that I could change today and do it every day for the next 2 weeks, the next 4 weeks? Then I think the second thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity just to identify one thing you might be able to do in the day and take it forward, you know, over a number of days or a week, and change a habit perhaps. And that could take into account, you know, sort of choice in diet and things like that, I'd imagine as well, Gemma. You know, sort of, I could easily, I think, you know, when I go to a supermarket at the moment, for some reason, when I walk in, I see packs, you know, stacks of potato chips. I think, great. That's my shopping done for the day. But you know, when you get a little bit further into the stores, you know, you find the best of what we should be looking at is probably at the back of the supermarket. You know, all the healthy stuff. So yeah, that
clever marketing there. Yeah, definitely in terms of changing up our diet, and we have to kind of understand. I always try and lay the foundations first with anyone I speak to, and get to understand where they actually are on their nutrition journey, because everybody, you know, it's not just going to be this one standard advice for everybody. It's not going to work that way. So we have to kind of listen to ourselves and understand what we actually need to work on. And that's not just to say, oh, I'm not very good at planning, I should probably plan better. We need to sometimes get a little bit more specific than that and think, what is something that's actually causing an issue in my diet right now or my exercise routine? And for example, something that we could think about is when I skip lunch, I tend to overeat in the evenings. So there you've kind of identified an actual problem, rather than just saying plan better. So you could, you know, just like Paul said, pick something like that and work on that for the next couple of weeks. And then you'll whenever we get into a consistent kind of process with that, you can identify another problem, like let's try to include some protein in every meal, or let's try to include some fruit and veg, just tackling one kind of issue at a time. And eventually, you know, things can kind of fall into place. Yeah.
You know, you mentioned exercise, and I think for a lot of people living in Vietnam, it's a very difficult thing as well. I think mostly because you have to, you know, think of doing something physical. You have to plan doing something physical. You need to make the time in the day to do something physical. And I'll just give you my experience is where I live, there's a garden around our building, and you know, I'd like to go for a walk out there, maybe you know, do some exercise. Then of course, you know, you're not allowed outside, and then I think, well, I'll run up and down the emergency exit stairs. So until, you know, you get confronted by a security guard who says you can't do that because they're for an emergency. Well, you know, there's no, and then of course, you know, so then you find yourself back in your apartment, and people say to me, what are you doing in there? And it's like, well, God, I think I'm limited to doing push-ups, but at least I'm doing something. So I think whatever we can do in our day, there's always opportunities and the ability to create good habits. I was just thinking that, you know, a lot of people tend to, I've noticed that a lot of people over the past 6 weeks have moved more onto, well, obviously everybody's online, but taking a vested interest, a very strong vested interest on what's happening in social media. And you're seeing, you know, some people, I guess you call them trolls, but obviously people posting things and people actually assuming that it's all true. And I think that we're just starting to, you know, and these rumors go around the internet about different things that are happening in our lives or people's lives. And I think we're just starting to, the way we think is starting to change. It's just, I feel that some people to a point, or the comments that are, you see online, it's like an alternative reality to a point. Do you see that? Do you see that happening, and any long-lasting effects on people? Another big question, Jan.
It is another big. Oh, you're going to direct it to me. Thanks.
No. I just saw the way you were looking.
Mm.
But it's just, I think it's I guess from the perspective of too much social media, to me, to a point, is maybe not a good thing in these days with so much information, I guess.
Yeah. I think that, you know, with social media, we need to connect to people. That's a good thing. But I think we have to be very protective of our mind, of what we take in, because whatever we take in, whether it's positive, negative, or anything in between, it's going to affect our emotion. So if we take a step back and say, okay, what do I want in my life? And, you know, I want better health. I want to increase my income. I want to, you know, work harder, whatever it may be. I rather focus on things that will help me achieve that. So what Gemma said before about having a goal, we need to have a goal. If I've got no goal, I will be aimlessly probably on social media, you know, attracted to different types of content. And if I get too much of the wrong content, that's going to affect my emotion. That's going to take me down a slippery slide of negative emotion and behaviour, and then it's hard to get back out. So I think, yes, we need to connect, but I think we have to make wise choices on what we choose to view on social media. And it's hard to tell the truth and the lies. You know, it's so smeared. So for me, I'd rather not watch half of it, still understand what's going on, but really focus on what I can do and build that.
I think that, yeah, I was going to say that I think the negative side to it is really the people who are posting. And I think this, you know, maybe there's some of me in this as well, is that when you're posting it for all the positive reasons and somebody's just trying to find something negative in it, and it's as though they just bomb you and then just go on to the next conversation or onto the next piece of information. It's just that, you know, everybody, I guess everybody's going through the same situation, and you just don't need that. You don't need that extra layer or somebody else bringing you down during your day. So I think, you know, when you talk about social media, it can be either a good thing from a communication point of view in a positive way, but some people choose to make it a you know, sort of an opportunity to release anger or, you know, frustration.
Yeah, I think it's more about the other person. If they make a negative comment, it's their way of trying to deal with the situation because they can't change or they don't know how to change. So they sort of lash out. So it says more about them than your content. So we have to have empathy and, you know, consideration. They're suffering and probably don't know how to handle it.
Well, I guess also it's, you know, if you're putting something out there, I guess you need to be able to do that. You know, you need to listen and be empathetic as well. You understand somebody else's situation or their point of view. I'm getting very good at it because, you know, we do have a very strong social media presence on in Vietnam and across Asia. So, you know, I'm personally myself learning a lot from that as well. It's something else you need to do in your day, but it's definitely worth considering, you know, being empathetic and understanding somebody else. I think that also social media to a point is, would you agree that it isolates people probably sometimes more than actually opens up social networks?
I think it's a mixed bag, personally. I mean, I think for some people, it's a tool in many ways, and it's how you use it. So, you know, if you're already feeling isolated, if you already aren't able to open up to people or trust other people, and you have to portray a particular image of yourself online, it might just embed that. However, for a lot of people, it is linking up with each other, keeping up with each other's life stories and being involved. So, I mean, again, it's a very personal thing. So I think it can be isolating for some, but I think it can be deeply connecting for other people. I mean, given we can't see each other face to face right now, and as I said, it's a tool, it's how you use it. And also just to sort of pick up off of something that Paul was saying earlier on. I mean, I think part of the problem, I've been sort of reflecting on it as you were talking, you know, well, how do I answer that question you asked earlier? I think part of the problem is it's information overload, and I think people are often grasping for information because, again, they want certainty. You know, it's a form of getting control, it's a form of being able to plan ahead, and so people will often kind of pick up whatever's out there. But I think if you're not selective about it, it can just feed into the fears that we have. It can feed more into the uncertainty. I mean, if anything, it has the opposite effect to what you want. So rather than feeling that you have more certainty, things change every day. You don't know what's true or what's not true. I mean, I'd say, you know, it's a good idea to be picky about what you choose to read. And, you know, with the turnover of information as well, you know, people want information so quickly nowadays, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's quality in the information or that it's true. Sometimes that can take days or even weeks to emerge fully. So, I mean, I'd say be picky. And as Paul is saying, I mean, maybe limit your exposure to it. You know, choose carefully what it is you're reading. There are a number of good digests out there about the COVID situation, the Vietnam Weekly being one. I'm not sure if you know it. But, you know, to choose carefully and rather than filling the day with just keeping up with the last bit of information to come out, I mean, to get some structure in the day and to find things which are more creative or productive and give a sense of meaning and purpose to life rather than just getting caught up in this bubble, this sort of storm of information.
I think that considering that as the time drags on and people are becoming, I guess, you know, a lot of people have that feeling of isolation. How you know, I guess it's another difficult question because everybody's so different in their situations. They're being affected, you know, potentially with their workload or the fact that the children are home and they're trying to study or they're not, and you know, everybody. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and there's 6 people in the family. They're all at home, the kids, the wife, the husband, and they're all using the internet. And it's sort of like nobody could have a Zoom call because the bandwidth just wasn't there. But, you know, she said to me that without that exposure or that being able to talk to friends and family because there was no bandwidth in the house, you know, made it doubly isolating for them, which was very difficult to deal with because you're in a house or a small apartment with 6 people. But for those people that really do at that point now where they feel isolated and they you know, they're finding it difficult to make that choice in what information they should be taking in, is what would be the next step, do you think? Is that they should consider getting professional help? And are those services available considering where we are at the moment with, you know, professional services overloaded, etc.?
I mean, you know, in terms of, you know, if people find that the isolation is something that they can't deal with in terms of, you know, their family or their friends, and I mean, you know, kind of a sort of side to that is, you know, what kind of support can you get? Hold on, sorry, just I've got a poll dropped in front of me. Okay, I can't see you properly. There you go, you're back again. So In terms of sort of
Be frozen.
Is he gone?
I think you still there, Paul?
Yeah, I'm still here. So,
Gemma? All right.
Yeah, still here. I'll let you go, Paul.
okay, yeah. So talking about, isolation, I think everybody has a different threshold. And, for us to perform and to not just survive, but to thrive, we have to be in a good state. And, I like to measure my state, between 1 and 10. Number 1, I'm down, I'm sad, I'm lonely, I've got no motivation, I can't work. Or a number 10, I feel good, I feel strong, I feel capable, I feel motivated, I'm making things happen. Where do you fall on that spectrum? And if you're down the lower end, a number 1 or 2, possibly you may need some help to get back up again, someone who can support you with some tools and techniques, some new skills and capabilities to move your way back up towards that survey just came onto my screen, so I just got rid of it. So you can move your way back up to a number 10, because if you can live at an 8, 9 or a 10, I think you can manage the world, because the world's going to continue to do what it's doing. If it's not COVID, it will be something else. And that's just what the world does. How do I respond to the world? I have to be bulletproof. So I will be more bulletproof, closer to a 10 than a 1. So if you are in the lower end of the spectrum, possibly you may need to reach out and get some help.
Good.
Yeah, I'm full agreement with Paul there, just in terms of being self-aware. And again, it's coming from kind of not listening to people telling you this is how you feel, actually listening to yourself and understanding where it is that whatever you're trying to work on and what is the actual issue, and trying to tackle it at its core, rather than trying to get everything in place and working again, trying to get everything perfect, breaking it down and trying to make it as simple as possible. And just coming back to the social media, that comes from self-awareness as well. I wrote that down as someone had mentioned, Yannick, I think. And understanding how is it actually making you feel. If you are constantly reading things that are affecting you or making you feel down, recognize that, and then I have a personal rule that I use. If it has to be either educating me, inspiring me, or making me laugh, and if it's kind of not meeting those, I don't really engage with it. And I find that really helpful to keep me on track with all my work and my study and everything else throughout the day. And I kind of schedule in times that I'm going to use it to talk to my friends and my family back home. And I think kind of having personal rules that are suited to your own needs are important to recognize and manage.
Good. I was thinking before that a lot of sorry, Jan, you dropped off a couple of times. You muted as well.
There you go. Yeah, sorry, my internet dropped out there, so I'm not sure what you got from it and what you didn't.
So I was just going to say that I guess, the more we spend time away from colleagues where there's always a release, or friends, or the opportunity to, sort of like, I miss going for lunches. Because that's a big part of what I do. It's it's a great opportunity to sit with people and obviously have discussions and even share issues, or just your social outlet. But I guess sort of being in this situation now, with everything that comes across through our day, we tend to internalize a lot of things, and when you internalize so much information, it probably gets a little bit jumbled, or things that the easy things are the ones that you want to deal with, not the hard stuff. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, is there any way that you can actually find clarity in everything that you take in on a daily basis? It's probably a big question again, but it's because you're dealing with
You
so
like
many
your
different
big questions.
Yeah, I know. It's just you're dealing with so many different personalities and situations. And
I mean, do you think you could be a little more specific with the question for me?
Well, to the panel, I guess it's is there any harm in actually internalizing a lot of things? And if people can't cope with that, how could they find clarity? Is it sort of like setting to-do lists, or is it sort of saying I will do one thing every day to make sure I get through what I've internalized?
All right. Well, there are a couple of practical things that I could offer there. I mean, there's a method called constructive worrying. So like if there's a lot of things that are running around in your head, it's very simple. You just take a piece of paper, divide it down the middle, you put your problems on one side. So the issues down this side. On the other side, you take steps towards solving those problems up until the point where you can't get any further. So the point is not, so let's say you have point 1, and then point 2, point 3. You start with point 1, that being the high priority one. If you find you're getting no headway on that, you move to point 2. And if you get halfway, like you take 2 steps towards it, say I want to study abroad, for example, but I can't because I can't leave the country. So can I study online? Okay, that's a possibility. Can I find out what the course entails? Maybe I can get hold of the reading list. These are moves you can make towards solving these problems. So in terms of getting some of that internalized stuff out, which is probably going to take the form of worries or concerns, to take these steps towards it. You don't have to solve the problem. It's just moving towards it so you don't feel that you're in stasis. You don't feel that you're not moving at all. So that's one way of doing that. And personally, I mean, I'm a big fan of telling people to journal. I mean, if you're carrying all of these things in your head, and then one problem mounts on top of another problem on top of another problem, it can be quite hard to get clarity. So simply to write things down, I encourage people to diagram, to brainstorm. So when I'm actually sitting with clients, quite often I'll ask them journal, write things down. You'll often start to see patterns or themes that emerge, sometimes simply being able to think it through with another person as well. So if you have someone you can talk to and that you can open up to, then that's obviously it's a good way. I mean, like you're talking about your colleagues. So if you can get colleagues online, there's no reason why you can't do that online or have a phone call, to talk it through, to write it through, to diagram it. So those are just a few ideas of what I think you might be able to do.
And I can see Paul nodding. Like that, because this is a big thing. This is a big thing for you as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the idea that Yannick said about journaling,
Yep.
because there's a lot happens up here and some of it's very strange. So when we can journal and think on paper, we can see what we're thinking. We can make sense of it. We can say, well, that's ridiculous. That's not true. That's just one of those thoughts that got in there and got on the spindle and just kept going. So
I was just going to jump in, Paul. I was going to say that it's interesting that a lot of people would say, well, I don't even know what a pen looks like, or I have no paper anyway, because a lot of people are digitally minded, and they'll put something on a phone or a tablet or something like that, or a to-do list which they may have downloaded from Android store or iOS store or something like that. I can tell you, I've tried it, but I'll always go back to the pen and paper because it's in your writing, it's there, it's unavoidable. I can delete the app if I want, but physically I need to rip a page out or throw the journal away.
Yeah, there's something earthy, something different about actually writing it down, having your hand on the paper, gives the time for the mind to think about it. Plus it keeps you off the screen. We don't want to have too much screen time. So this could be an opportunity, a sprinkling of opportunity to find another way to do something off a screen. And it could be just journaling. Wow, that's a bit less screen time. That's awesome.
Yeah. Look, I totally agree. It's I think that when these ideas come to you, if you can just grab a journal and write it down, it just reinforces it up here as well as on paper as well. So I guess for a lot of people at this stage, and what I'm thinking is that you know, as this marches on, as our situation marches on, people will be coming to a stage where they'll need to make some major decisions. And some of those decisions we've probably seen, you know, through our networks, where people have said, you know, there's no work, or there's no opportunity in the future. There's changes to labour laws and immigration laws, and this is not my scene. I think people should be thinking about this idea of putting those, you know, as you spoke, Jan, about what I can do and what I can't do, and this would be probably a good opportunity for people for them to start at this point and actually understand where they are, and you know, go through this decision-making process, or just to be able to track it over the next couple of weeks as we probably get to the stage where we're going to come out of lockdown. Would you agree?
In short, yes.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I think it's you know, I think it's important for people to kind of figure out, you know, what they need. It's just kind of a tangent to what you're saying, but I think, you know, it's a good opportunity during lockdown to actually think about what it is you actually fundamentally need. What are your core needs? So, for example, whether that is something which is social, whether it's something which is professional, to sort of make a list. I mean, in a way, do you know the kind of old desert island game where you used to decide, you know, what items you'd take to a desert island? Did you know that one? I mean, so it's a useful tool for thinking about something like this. I mean, what is fundamental to you? So if you had to go to a desert island, what 3 or what 5 items would you actually take with you, or what 5 items would you take? Would that be family? Would it be music? Would, you know, what would it be? What would you want there? And it's a good way to kind of identify, well, look, these are the things that are important in life to me. But also then to take that a little bit further and to ask yourself, well, what is important about these things? So why are they important to me? I mean, is it with family? Is it the connection? Is it the sense of love? You know, with something like professionalism, is it the sense of achievement that it gives me? Is it the sense of productivity it gives me? Does it give me meaning or purpose in life? So, I mean, it can actually be an opportunity. I mean, much like what Paul was saying earlier on, you know, that yes, it can be very tough being in lockdown, but you can take it in a slightly different direction and start to focus on what are my core needs. And to kind of jump back to something you were asking earlier on, I mean, when you come out of a lockdown, when things do start to ease, you were talking about whether these are habits that become ingrained, whether they can be changed back. So whether you can end up having these negative habits. Well, you could also, you know, get down to, what do I really need from life? You know, what do I really need to feel that my life is meaningful, purposeful, you know, to make sure that I feel engaged. And yes, it is very tough during lockdown. It's not to minimize that. I mean, you know, I feel it too. But, you know, you can also start to focus in on the things that really mean something to you. And you can actually use it as an opportunity when things ease up to make big, big changes in your life.
Yeah.
So just a little tangential, but...
Yeah. Just to piggyback a bit on what Jan was saying, you know, and you, Simon, how, you know, for some people, their concern is their career because of the labour laws, things happening in Vietnam. For other people, it could be relationships. For other people, it could be health. So to make progress on any or all of those areas, I think we need to identify where we are now. Where am I starting from? Just do a stock take and then start to look at opportunities or possibilities to be able to go to where I want to go. And that's a really good place to start. That's a great place to put your focus, to put your energy towards, because that's building your future. And what Gemma said, she had 3 really good questions. You know, this task I'm about to do now, will it make me laugh? Will it improve my life? And I forget the other one, but they're very good questions to ask. Because if it's not going to do any of those 1, 2, or 3 things, why am I doing it? Am I just filling in time? So really get clear on where I am now and what I need to do to take 1 step forward.
So with that in mind, do you think that now is a good time to be making big decisions, or should we just be taking the very small steps to get through this period that we're in now?
good question. And I think it depends on your state. We mentioned before about being in a good state. If I'm a number 10 in my state, I feel focused, I feel calm, I feel creative, I can think of solutions. That's the perfect state to answer any big question in your life. But if I'm in a low state, I can't think, I'm distracted, I think you wouldn't make any major decisions at that end of the spectrum. We need to get ourselves up, and then we can calmly focus and create our life we want to move forward with. So it's going to depend on the individual, where they're at in their state.
Good point. Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, because Yannick kind of mentioned something very similar as well, that we are on, you know, we're in the same situation, but everybody is handling it differently. So I think it's just kind of, I like to break it down into, I mentioned it earlier, having an identity-based goal. So focus on who you actually want to become. And I like to, even when I'm working with my clients, it's, you know, it's obviously it's to do with health, fitness and performance, but it's usually I like to kind of see it, and it's not having an outcome-based goal that in X amount of weeks I'm going to look a certain way or perform a certain way. It's going to be more how am I actually going to feel in this time? So who's the person I'm trying to become, and writing a list of all the kind of characteristics that that person would have, and then kind of breaking it down into, okay, what can I do now to work on that it's going to bring me a bit closer? And that can be that can be just as simple as, so somebody who's really fit, strong and healthy would be very active. So I'm going to try and include some more activity in my day to day. I'm going to do 50 steps after I eat my dinner, go for a really small walk, and then you can build it up from there.
All very positive. Yeah. So I think, sorry.
Yeah, I just really love what Gemma said. You know, it's about identifying who is my future self. Who do I want to be after lockdown? Who do I want to be at the end of the year? And then come back to today and work very hard on becoming that person now. That's very powerful.
I mean, to sort of just bounce off of what both Gemma and Paul are saying, I mean, again, it's one of those questions, but I mean, in terms of what they're saying, I think what I hear you both saying is that, you know, in a way you need a foundation to build off. You know, to make a huge decision if your life is in flux and everything's in turmoil can be very difficult. It might just add less certainty, less security. But if the sort of foundations are already there, if you feel stable and secure enough, then I don't see any reason why you couldn't make large decisions and change your life in a major way. So it's a simple answer, but that's my input to it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Totally agree. I think there's also people that in the community who may be in a situation which is almost, you know, which is maybe dire. Are there, from your experience, are there people who are accessible in our community? For these people that feel that they may be in a situation where they can't make these decisions, they can't you know, get to the point of thinking, this is who I want to be in the next 6 months, or I need to consider where I will be because of my financial position, or what am I actually doing here? What do I need to do tomorrow even? Are there people in our network, or are there people in the community that are accessible at this time? Because I know that you know, being in the lockdown we are, it's very hard to get out. It's very hard to make contact with people. It's even sometimes very hard just to even think beyond the day. So are there people that all these services available?
I'd say yes. I mean, like, you know, you've got 3 people here, obviously, you know, and there are a lot of others out. I mean, I'd add the caveat that a lot of us are, you know, we are taking on a lot of clients and are often quite fully booked a lot of the time, but it doesn't mean that we're not there. And there are many other people out there besides us. For example, you know, I was seeing people more or less fully in person, face to face all the time. I'm now fully online. So, you know, a lot of people are now working fully online. It is accessible. And, you know, one of the wonders of that is that, you know, you don't need to travel across the city to see someone like myself anymore. You can just see me online. And I'd assume it's the same with Gemma and Paul as well.
Yeah, it's so much more convenient. So that's a good thing about going online.
Well, I think is it in your email signature, Paul? Do you have questions? You can ask me. I'm always here. I'm always available.
Yeah. So I always usually finish off my email, let me know your questions. I'm always here. So if they want to reach out, they can. And, how I help people is help bring clarity to them, release some of the stress which is in the mind, and balance that so they can calm down, they can start to have some clarity. And in that clarity, I don't know what they should do for their life. Only they know, but they can't access that information while they're a number 1. I have to get them to a number 10 or a 9 or an 8. And in that position, they're able to come up with their own solutions. Some of these people are 40, 50 years old, and I don't know how they run their life, but they do. And if they're a number 10, they will know with some support exactly what they need to do.
Good. So, look, I can honestly say, just on a personal note, in my life, I probably reached out to people in your professions at some stage, not at some stage in my life, just to deal with different issues. And it would have been the best decision I ever made. I think I've always been the person that would have been probably, the 7 or 8 or 9, but I don't think I've ever been a 10, but, sort of, I was able to make that decision and actually share or seek advice from people within the professions that you each represent. And it was a good investment. It was a good investment to make, headway in your life and also the person you are in the future as well. So I think it's important that people who maybe have that feeling of I'm not sure what to do next, that there are people in our community and in our networks that can help you. And people should take advantage of that. I was just going to ask Andrew, who's also online, whether or not there are any questions that people have wanted to ask the speakers as well. You there, Andrew?
Hey, everybody. Yes, I am. We've got some really great conversations, little side conversations flowing at the moment. Whilst people are just adding in their questions, something I'm probably really interested to ask all you guys is the mindset, right? Everyone has a different mindset. With Olympics just finishing, is there anything that you can take away from it from an athlete's point of view that can be translated into your personal lives?
For that question there, I think we all want to be a master. And we look at the athletes, they're a master at what they do. And how do they become a master? They practice their sport, their art, whatever they do. So if we reflect on to us, how can I be a master as a father, as a mother, as a child, as an employer? What can I do? And that's working on ourselves, working on who we are, showing up, helping people. So I think the sports people, the high business people, they can perform and do very well. And they have to practice their art. So, if people have a problem or a challenge, if they don't seek information or try to break the borders of the problem, it won't disappear. So how does a sports star get better? They keep learning, they keep studying, they keep practicing. So I think we need to do the same in our life. If someone has a challenge and they can't overcome it, they need an external influence to come in and to help them. These people in the Olympics, they have coaches because they need a coach to see the little distinction that they're not doing, but if changed, will make a really big difference in their life. So I think it has a lot of power for our own lives and how we can be also athletes in our own life.
Nice. Really quickly, Gemma, Yannick, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's also that, what was nice with the recent Olympics is seeing that some athletes have stepped up and said, well, look, I actually need help. So, it's a slightly different take on what Paul's saying, but, he's talking about how you've got a coach to help you to get through, to get over the hurdles. But you can sort of see that some of the athletes have stepped up and said, look, I'm not coping. This is harming me more than doing good. And I mean, to me, it's a very different thing, but, just looking at what you can learn from that they are listening to themselves. They're listening when things are becoming too much. They're realizing when, they can't manage, and they're reaching out for help, and they're stopping. They're not just pushing themselves beyond the limit. So like beating themselves with a rod on the back and saying, look, I've got to be perfect. I cannot fail. They're reaching out and they're being honest about it. I mean, for me, that was one of the most moving things about the recent Olympics, that people are actually stepping up in a public forum and saying that, and hopefully encouraging other people to understand that, even people at the top struggle, have difficulties, and can reach out for help. So not to be afraid of doing that.
Yeah, nice. And Gemma, I think people probably forgot, at the start, you're a former athlete as well. Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on
it? Both from personal and working with kind of athletes, I think sometimes people put them on this pedestal that they're really different to us, when in reality, they've still got their same struggles, but the difference, just like Paul said, is that they kind of find ways to keep going, but keep going with certain things and recognize when they need help. And, athletes are working with not just one coach. They've got the psychologist, they've got their nutritionist, they've got a huge support team that are helping guide them through. So, understanding when we need to reach out for help, and that consistency for a lot of things is key, but understanding that there's certain things we need to be consistent with, and sometimes it's not everything at the one time.
Yep, nice. And look, I know we're running out of time, but there's this one question from Simon Pugh, I think, to the panel. Hold on, let me just read it for 2 seconds. How important is it to be real with ourselves and acknowledge exactly where we are at, even if it's not great? So I'll give it to you guys to talk about it, probably just a quick 30-second spiel. I'll start with Paul. What's your thoughts?
Okay, I think it's really important that we have to know where we are. If we tell little tales and cover up, we're not being honest where we are. So that's the wrong foundation to move forward to where you want to go. So if we can identify and be truthful and speak our truth, that's a great foundation to get to where you need to go for your next step.
Thank you. And what about you, Yannick?
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, if you can be real with yourself, then hopefully you can be real with other people. So in terms of actual relationships and connecting to other people, feeling a real deep connection to other people, being able to reach out in times of trouble, and also to help other people when they're, going through tough times, it brings people closer, I find. And I think it brings, an odd way to put it, but it brings people closer to themselves. If you're able to be honest with yourself, you're probably more able to solve a problem rather than avoiding or pretending it's not there, which just could lead to spiraling downwards.
Yeah, nice. Truth, honesty. And Gemma, finishing up, what's your thoughts?
I think vulnerability is very important. Being vulnerable, not just with, sometimes we try and paint the pictures for others to see us, this is what we want to be. But I think, and I come back to journaling, that's where I started to get really truthful with myself, and, the picture that I want to paint, and to kind of attaching myself away from that. And definitely journaling. I started off with writing paragraphs and found that wasn't helpful. So I switched over to, I committed myself to writing 1 line a day, and I found that really helpful. And then whenever I had more to kind of think about, I journaled a lot more. So again, come back to consistency and being real. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And I'm going to give it back to Simon to close everything off. I just want to say just big thank you to all the questions, all the comments that we're having right now on both Zoom and Facebook. But I'm going to hand it back to Simon.
Would you mind if I added something quickly before we hand back to Simon? Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay. I mean, an interesting thing that I'm hearing is that, Gemma is saying that she's been through difficult times in her life. Paul is also saying the same thing. I mean, I think one of the hurdles of people reaching out for professional help is that they see it as, somehow there's something wrong with me, or this is not acceptable, this is not what other people do. But, I don't know if I'm understanding this correctly, but I think Gemma is saying that she's been through tough times in her life and she's found ways to overcome that. I'm assuming Paul has also had things. I mean, Simon himself is also saying that, like, he's had times when he's had to reach out to other people. And I think I just want to put my hand up here and say, well, look, I also, as a professional counselor, I have to have counseling. I have to have supervision. I have to have counseling. And I've reached out when things are difficult in my life. So it's to sort of humanize us. We're not perfect human beings. We also have to have times when we refer to professionals for help, and just to sort of say that, this is okay. You can still do that. And, it's not a sign of failure. It's not a sign of, something being wrong with you. We all do it, and we all need someone sometimes. If it's too much for you and your family and your friends to cope with, reach out.
I really like what you said about humanization. At the end of the day, it's that humility with ability, and part of having that, humility is being human in itself. So thank you for sharing. Simon, I'll leave it to you to finish it all up.
Thanks, Andrew. You're getting in some practice for the next session with Matt Cowan on the Bureau, eh? Which actually was just mentioned before in the chat box, that if you don't follow the Bureau on Facebook with Matt Cowan, Andrew and is on there as well. But it's good listening, and they talk very plainly and very directly about issues in our community or the great things happening as well. So it's a good listen. I think you're doing that on a weekly basis, is it?
Yes, sir. With Mel and with Matt and myself.
Yeah, it's great fun. It's good. It's a good listen. Thanks, Andrew. I was just going to put in there as well that don't, for people, and I'm no different, and we're all, everybody on the panel is no different. We have our good days. We have our bad days. These come and go. How we manage them is important. I don't think it's unfair to take some time out, and even when we're at home 24/7, just to say, I'm going to have a day off and just tune out, do something for yourself. I've never been a big person for, I guess, being still. I've always had such a busy life, but I think it's important that you do take that time out and have some stillness in your life. I mean, I hope I didn't seem like I was advocating for people to not use online apps or to be online and on social media. But, I think from the point of view of using technology, there's apps for just about anything now. And that applies to finding counselling people in your area. There's online apps to direct you to people that can assist you in that area. There's online apps for meditation, which I use, and so I've never been one to meditate. I just can't get comfortable. I can't sit cross-legged anyway. But just to even sit in a chair and go through, the app will guide you, and some of the best relaxation I think I've had in a long time. Paul's directed me to different books, to audio books that are worth listening to, and I'm getting some really great advice and traction out of these apps as well. Or if you're looking for online fitness, and I'd say to a lot of people, if you say you can't do fitness because you can't get outside and get to the gym, Fitness First, which is an Australian owned gym company or business, I mean, they do something like 4 or 5 sessions a day, and these people are in smaller apartments than what I have. And so even nutrition, and Gemma would probably be able to tell you from a nutrition point of view, there's apps which will guide you on whether you're a vegan or whatever your persuasion is, what sort of meals you should be preparing for your body type or for what you want to achieve. So there's so many different ways of finding different things online and apps, and our panelists as well that you can talk to, you can connect with. And I was just going to say that basically After this event, there'll be the recording will be on Facebook, and also we'll have links to the page with contacts for each of our speakers, and some other resources as well. Maybe I can share you some of the great resources that I've come across as well. But please, after this session, within today, go to the website or go to our Facebook page, and we'll have these resources available to you. So I'd really like to thank Gemma and Paul and Jan, and also Andrew, for making everything possible today. You're all busy. We're all very busy. It doesn't, because we're at home, doesn't mean that we're sitting cross-legged on the couch with a packet of Doritos watching Netflix. We're all very busy. And I checked before, we're all wearing pants as well. So I really thank each of you for the time you spent with us today, and those people who tuned in, and for those people who use this as a resource. It's very appreciated, and I hope that you stay healthy, fit and strong. And for some of you today, we haven't met face to face other than on video and phone calls, and I look forward to the day when we can get together as well. So thank you, Andrew. That's a wrap.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.